Welcome to the Wing Life Podcast, where we talk about wing foiling and the lifestyles of those who enjoy this great sport. Okay, and we are live and going. So thanks for joining me today on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good afternoon for me. Good morning for you, I guess.
Yeah, it's what time is it over here now? It's 8:25. And happy to start the day with some foil chat, some board chat. That's it's not every day you get to do that.
I actually got a sneaky beer because it's 5:30 here. So I ran by the fridge. It was like, hey, there's one final beer. That's mine. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, nice. So I guess how was the workday today? What did you guys work on?
Well, not too bad. Just nowadays, like I'm mainly in the office doing stupid office work, like invoicing and accounting and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was not too bad. I've got a bunch of new guys started just like this week and the week before because we're hiring a lot of new people. So I'm slowly handing over a lot of my work, but right now I'm still doing a lot of stuff myself. But we're growing so quickly that it's getting better, and hopefully we'll have more time to get more sessions in the near future. So it's all good. But but it's full on. It's August now, so it's full on season. So yeah, it's always the busy time of year. It's we're backing up for the big demo events, which are mainly in Germany the next 2 weeks. There's two really big events in Germany. So we're in the Netherlands. It's about 5-6 hour drive, and there's big kite and wing and foil events, bigger than they organize in the Netherlands. So we need to go there the next 2 weeks and then come back, repack, and then prepare for AWSI in the US, which is the next event, beginning of September. So it's always this time of year. It's always a couple of weeks home, a couple of weeks away, just keeps going until October, and then it sort of mellows out and we go into winter and it's more production work.
Okay. Now, for the first time I saw your brand was in Victoria, BC. I went to a friend's store and they had just converted, I think, their yoga studio, and they were running a successful stand-up paddleboard rental business, and they were bringing on different wing brands. And I'm a teacher here, an instructor. I'm like, hey, what do you think about Appletree? And I said, well, I haven't seen them yet, but I love the concept. And then I did a bit more research into you and into your brand, and I just loved your story. So maybe for those at home who are unfamiliar with Appletree, could we start with your origin story? It's pretty cool, and it helped brand and shape your entire company.
Yeah, sure. So it's a bit of a classic story of making your hobby into a full-time job. So I was actually working as a head chef in the kitchen. But always was interested in producing anything, basically, just making my own stuff. Was doing some surfboards just for fun. Surfing, like normal wave surfing, became a thing here in the Netherlands, or is quite a big thing now, even though we have pretty shitty waves. But boards were not widely available back then, so I just started making my own, or started at least like experimenting. The first ones were pretty terrible, obviously, but it was fun to do. So it was just a hobby, making some boards. Then made a few more for friends. Slowly made like a board a month, something like that, next to my job. My brother Jorrit, who I own the company with, finished his studies, and he has more of a technical background than me, and he started working at Mystic, the well-known kite accessories wetsuit brand, which is from the Netherlands. It's actually literally like 15 minutes away from our offices. Their headquarters nowadays, they're owned by North Action Sports, so they're the same group as North Foils and North Kiteboarding. He started working there after an internship as a wetsuit designer and harness designer, and he got into kite surfing. And I was doing surfboards. I was just experimenting for fun with how to make a board stronger, adding some materials. I was talking to some suppliers of different kinds of resins, different kinds of fibers, all sorts. Again, just as a pure out of interest. Just I like to find out how things are made and how things are done. And my boards got pretty strong, still all hand shaped, still all handmade. I did everything myself. And he got into kite surfing, and and he told me, like, the guys are starting strapless kite surfing, so really wave kite surfing on surfboards, but they constantly keep breaking, and we're looking for a way to make kiteboards stronger. And around that time, there was just like either people were riding normal PU polyester surfboards and destroying them within a few months, or they were riding these really heavy ultra thick glass boards that were made for kite surfing, but they were not very lively. There were not a lot of feel in there. So I just started doing a few boards for kite surfing, and then turned out we could make pretty strong boards. And my brother started sort of helping me a little bit with new technologies, and we experimented with a whole host of stuff. And back then we were actually, our parents were living on a apple farm super close to here. And we were doing everything in the backyard in a shed. Basically, I took over my parents' shed, got the bikes out, everything, made it to do a small shaping bay. And my parents actually liked it, because otherwise we would, we left the house, so we were never around much. And as parents want to see their kids every once in a while. So actually, my mom was always super happy to have us over, because at least their kids were there, so we could work in the shed, whenever we wanted to. So we were making boards, everything hand shape, nothing too exciting. We were experimenting with some vacuum glassing, which is the way a lot of brands do. So we're using EPS foam, using a vacuum pressing method to get a reasonably strong board. We could use some sandwich materials, all that sort of stuff. Just got to used to working with those techniques. And sort of two things happened at the same time. My brother had a friend, and he was making a 3D printer, and he made a few 3D printers, and he said, I can probably make a CNC machine, because it's the same as a 3D printer, just bigger, and it just takes things away instead of adding, but the rest is the same. So I was like, sure, but they needed money for parts. And I was making good money as a chef, so I said, like, okay, I'll pay for parts if you build the thing. So that was the deal. So my brother and his friend built the thing, and I paid for it. Took a year, and then we had a CNC machine, which was quite funny. So it was in the shed. By then we sort of extended the shed with like a shipping container we put next to the shed. Luckily, my parents had a big garden, so we could get a shipping container, put it next to the shed. Put the machine in there, and then just started experimenting. It's so nice to have this machine, so you can just replicate shapes and get it way more consistent. And then we were at I think it was a big conference in Germany. There's a yearly get together for composite industry professionals, and we got tickets, so we just went, and I always just speak to whoever I can speak to, and then just network, and found some people they liked our story, so it was like, yeah, we can hook you up with some like high-tech materials, high-tech foams, high-tech other infusion stuff that's normally you can get it, but it's like not super easy. But there's this couple of young guys from the Netherlands making surfboards, and everyone there is making yachts and windmill blades and relatively boring stuff. So surfing is cool, They're like, we'll help these kids out. Maybe they can make us a surfboard to put on the booth next year. So, we can relate to these kids. They're trying to get something going. So we got a couple of brands actually send us loads of experimental things to work with. We even got some foam that was never going to work for surfboards. We knew, because it was way too expensive, but they're like, oh yeah, have a piece, and then we just experiment. And one of them actually said, like, you can come to our lab to see if we can find a way to use a resin infusion method on a surfboard. And that was sort of our breakthrough. We went to their lab. We did a bunch of tests. It didn't work. It actually cost us quite a few boards that failed. And we were on the sort of tipping point of stopping quite a few times, because it's actually really hard to simplify what infusion is basically you make your pack of fibers, and your sandwich materials, or in our case also fin boxes, foil boxes, inserts, all that stuff. And you put it all together dry without any epoxy or polyester or resin of what sort. And then put it under vacuum pressure, and then inject it under pressure with a really thin resin. And what it does is it eliminates any air bubbles, and it gets you the ideal ratio between fiber and resin. It's a bit of a technical story, but
yeah, I'm sure people would love to hear, because this is contrary to how most brands build, right? So
no other brand builds this way. The easiest thing to compare it to is like if you were back in school and you had to at the creative class, you had to stick pieces of paper together. If you completely smother it with glue and then stick the two together, it never really works. And you might remember like it's not really stuck. If you apply just a thin layer of glue, like the right amount, it works way better. It sticks way better because there is an ideal ratio between fiber strength or your piece of paper and your glue or your epoxy or your polyester resin. And it's a well-known thing that there's this ideal ratio that you're always looking for, because that way you get the most strength out of your fibers and your combination, your layup with your epoxy or your honeycombs or any reinforcements.
That can make sense, because that Elmer glue is tough. That white glue was hard to use back then. Yeah. Well, I guess
exactly.
Principle here.
yeah, it's similar. Yeah. And the thing is, like, if you have a strong layer, like a fiber layer, and another strong layer, and you have a lot of glue in between, the basic strength that you get is the glue, just the glue. And the glue itself is not strong. It's the glue matrix with the fiber that makes the whole thing strong. So, using vacuum infusion, you get the ideal ratio automatically, basically, and no air. And air is always bad because air just means weak points.
So can we maybe explain this a little bit more? So maybe walk through how other people do it, and then just for our folks at home who are looking for a board and they're like, "Hey, I need something." Why does this set this apart? So a traditional company is doing it version A, and then you're saying you're doing it a brand newer.
Yeah. So there's three basic ways. Number one is the most traditional way of making surfboards. So like what you can look it up on YouTube, how to make a surfboard. That will show you this. No matter the material, so either it's polyester or epoxy or the type of foam. What they do is they have a blank. You shape the blank. That's the piece of foam. You shape the piece of foam into whatever shape you want. I'm talking about shapes here. And you layer a layer of glass fiber or multiple layers or carbon fiber, which is like a cloth. It's like a flexible cloth. You layer it over, and then you mix a batch of polyester or epoxy resin, which is a like syrupy, thick, transparent plastic that's liquid, and then due to a chemical reaction, it hardens into this plastic. So when it's still liquid, you pour it over, and then with a plastic squeegee, you work it into the fiber, and the fiber absorbs this resin and sticks it to the blank. And then with your plastic squeegee, you scrape away the excess resin as much as you can that drips on the floor, that's discarded. And then the layers of this fiber cloth are stuck to the blank. And you wait for the whole thing to dry. You flip it around, you sand the edges because there's always a bit roughness there, and you do the other side. And then that's the way you build a normal surfboard. So it doesn't matter polyester or epoxy or carbon or glass fiber, it doesn't matter. So that's number one. That's the weakest way, but it's also the easiest, quickest, cheapest way. So that's why normal PU polyester surfboards are relatively cheap, because it's all cheap materials and it's quite an easy process. Then the next level up is that you do the same thing, but before the resin dries, you cover the whole thing in a perforated plastic layer, like it's literally a foil with tiny holes in there, and then an absorption layer, and then you put that into a bag and you pull it vacuum. And what the vacuum does, it applies pressure to your board and your layers and your resin, and the excess resin um, flows through the holes in the plastic layer into the absorption layer. And it gets you, so it takes away a part of the excess resin that was not needed, basically. It's like a sponge with water. You fill it with water, it's completely absorbed, and then you smash it down. So you still have all the sponge there, but you have less resin there. So again, the resin is just a glue to stick everything together. Simply said, it's just a glue to stick everything together, and you want minimum amount of resin, basically. That's what most brands do. And what we do is sort of the opposite. So we squish first and then inject the resin. And it's very hard because it's a common process that they also use for fins, foils, car spoilers, whatever, race boats, all kinds. But in all of those applications, they have a mold of the boat or of the spoiler for your race car. So they make a mold first, and then they press this package into the mold. This is nice because you can replicate over and over again with the same mold. But the problem is that you can't customize, and you need a mold for every part you do. And for us, as a relative niche sport, it's not worth making a mold for every board. Plus, you can't do any customization. So you're going to stick with the same mold for a really long time, because it's literally like a mold for a surfboard. You're looking at like $15,000 to $20,000 for one. So that's one model, one size. So if you have one model in 6 sizes, you need 6 times. It's a lot. There is a few brands doing this way, making normal surfboards, but considers normal surfing is a much, much bigger sport. So it's worth it in some cases, but then still you will see these brands sell the same model for a number of years. They might change the color because you can do that, but they can't change the shape just to recoup their investment on the mold. And then still, it's not really the same process as what we do. So in surfing, it's not really used that much. And for us, so we found a way to do it without using a mold. So we basically used the shaped blank as a internal mold and then press against it. And then,
okay.
Yeah, so it's hard to explain it easier than that. I understand that it's a hard thing to wrap your head around if you're not a technical person, but sort of that's the only way that I can explain it. But the main takeaway is that,
in essence, what you're doing is you're wrapping everything on there. For example, so if your blank is lying on something, is it suspended, or is it on a table?
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Okay, fair enough.
It's also a secret process, so
that's fine.
I can't go into details of how we do it. It's just
I was going to ask you that, and that's fine. In essence, what you do is you make super strong boards. It's a unique process, and that's all we really need to know.
Yeah, there's a number of upsides to this process. The most important one is that we can use core materials and honeycomb reinforcements and stuff that you cannot use without. You need this way of working to be able to use these materials. So it's all connected. Like back to the foam. So for instance, the foam that we use, we have our own foam. So we don't use EPS. We use a foam that is 100% waterproof and has a really fine texture. So it's really nice to shape. But if you shape it and glass it in the traditional way, the connection between the foam and the layer on the outside is not ideal. So it will delaminate over time. So a lot of people have tried using this foam in normal surfboards or kiteboards or whatever, because it's really nice. Like it surfs really nice. It shapes really nice. It's really strong, and it's waterproof, which are all quite important things. But but if you normal glass it, it just doesn't work. Like it will delaminate, especially under your front foot where you put a lot of pressure. The vacuum infusion makes basically a perfect connection between the outer shell and the inner foam core, because there is no air. So it's again a bit of a technical thing, but like we found a way that the foam does not delaminate, guaranteed. So we never have any delaminations. So we can use this really nice foam, which is also guaranteed waterproof. So like you said before, if you do ding the board, you do get a crack in the rail or whatever, you really do not have to repair it immediately. You can just keep riding, finish your holiday, finish your session, and then it's advisable to repair it at some point, but you don't have to panic on the water. And especially with these carbon boards that are full black in the sun, they heat up a lot, so it outgasses and water does get inside, but not with our foam. So
yeah, that's maybe something we could unpack just a little bit, because traditionally we're used to windsurf ding, for example. You crack that nose, you're scared to bring that board, because if you get any water in there, you're anywhere from $500 to $3,000 thing is now
if it's
almost obsolete.
Yeah. Because the reason for this is that the inside of your traditional board is a really light EPS core. So EPS is the beaded foam that your television comes packed in when you buy it, but it's really low quality actually. And the reason for this is because it needs to be lightweight. For the high volume, you need the lightweight foam, because the lighter you make the core, the lighter the total product will be. The individual beads in EPS are waterproof, but the void between the beads is not. Like water and air can flow between these beads. The higher quality, the higher density, the harder it gets. The lower quality, lower density, the easier water flows through these core. Now, what happens if you're on the beach? Your board heats up due to the sun, obviously. The pressure inside the board increases, and it starts to blow out air through your hole. You might not even know you have a crack, but it starts to sort of blow out air because the pressure increases, the air expands, and it blows out. Then you didn't notice you had a crack. You grab your board, you walk to the water, you put it in the water. It gets cold because of the water. What happens? The air contracts, and it sucks air back in, but it's on the water, so it sucks in water. And the water doesn't stay at the hole. It sucks into the board. And once it's stuck inside the core, it's extremely hard to get out. Like if from the windsurfing days, you might know, like, if you have a crack in your nose, you put the board upside down, the nose down, it can drip for days. It just literally, like, it slowly will flow out, but you never really completely get rid of it. So that's a big problem. And the way they make the board strong is by adding a sandwich layer. So a sandwich layer is essentially a really thin layer of hard foam, or sometimes wood or bamboo, around the really soft core, and that's sandwiched in between layers of fiberglass and sometimes a layer of carbon. This makes the board look really like clean. It's really impact resistant, but the problem is as soon as you go through and you hit the core, you're done, basically. So it's strong up to a point, and then it's done. Now, we use a foam that's much stronger from the start and waterproof, but also higher density. So there's no need to make a sandwich because the outside layer is already strong enough on the strong foam. There is a few downsides to this. For instance, that if you dent one of our boards, the dent stays. With another board, because the hard layer on the outside is sort of flips back, and the dent is inside, but you don't really see it anymore. But for us, the upsides are bigger than the downside, so we decided that it's okay to go this way. And for your durability, longevity of the board, it's way better because it does outlast the other boards quite a bit. The other small downside there is that the foam is relatively heavy. So if you make really big boards like 130 liter plus, it does get heavier compared to these light foam boards. But on the smaller boards, this is completely flipped around and we're way lighter. But it's just there is a tipping point there. But we focus mainly on making boards full carbon for advanced riders who are not looking for 130 liter board. So our main sellers are 70, 80, 90 liters, in which case we're like for wingboards, and in which case we're super, super light compared to the others and way stronger.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool trade-off, especially me just kind of walking through that scenario, because I've had several windsurf boards, because I've had two wing boards and I haven't dinged them, but windsurf boards, you'll go and then as long as you're okay with them getting heavier and heavier, it's fine. But I read this and it was a cool concept. And I don't think a lot of people know that. They just assume that all boards are either made the same or they're using the top level quality of material. And to approach it in this way, if you're looking for a new board, this would definitely be something that you can now consider.
Yeah. And it's different, it looks different, it feels different. So you have to that's why we keep explaining the whole story over and over again, because it's something people are used to a certain way and they're used to a certain feel in their boards. And we know this is better, especially for foiling where you need the stiffness and the directness of the board. This works way, way better. And to add to that, so we are nowadays, from our humble beginnings on the farm, we grew to quite a big company. So we now have our own production facility in Portugal. So my younger brother moved to Portugal to run the factory. And we actually moved again last year from a small factory in Portugal to a way bigger. So our new factory now is 3,500 square meter. I don't know how many square feet that is, but a lot, times 9 or something. So it's really big, and it's completely ours, and that's quite unique as well. So we always stuck to making our own stuff, where literally every other brand of wingboards produce at a different facility. So none of these brands have their own factory. They all produce with Chinese or Thai, or there's a number of factories in the east side of the world that can produce these kind of boards. They all produce there. We always wanted to do our own production, because from the start we've been mostly interested by this technology side, and we want to fully control the whole production process, from the buying of rough materials to training our staff and everything. And then at the same time we want to build a sustainable company, so we're really heavy on where we get our stuff, mostly locally produced. For instance, we use the epoxy resin with the highest bio-based content there is. There is higher bio-based, but that doesn't, that's not strong enough for us, or it's really yellow. It's so we use the right balance. We try to source everything locally. So our foam is made locally in Portugal. And we also hire everyone on a full-time contract with all benefits, which is not as easy as producing in Asia, where you pay people peanuts and fire and hire them at will. We really can't. Portugal is slightly cheaper than the Netherlands, especially for real estate, and it's easier to find staff. That's why we moved from the Netherlands to Portugal. But we really always want to stay in Europe and stay and produce locally for the local market. At the same time, I realize, you being in Canada, we're growing extremely quickly in the US and Canada. So we export a lot from Europe to Canada, which is not very local. So we are looking into, it's on our multi-year plan to eventually start a production facility overseas to produce for the overseas market. That's one of our goals. So we can, stick with our beliefs of producing locally. But that's another major step that's going to be a few years in the making, probably.
Yeah, those are nice core business values. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's not easy, but it's also more fun. I wouldn't like to outsource my production fully to a company on the other side of the world, where I don't know my staff, I don't know who they are, I can't speak their language. I really don't want to go there. We want to build a sustainable company. And actually, it's kind of nice, because we now also produce for other brands. So there's more and more brands that see that what we do, one, produces an amazing board, and two, is better for the planet and for everyone on it. So they are willing to pay a little bit more, or quite a bit more, and produce locally with us as well. So that's also one of the reasons why we can expand so quickly, because we are producing for a number of brands. There's more brands coming in the next year. And we constantly get approached by brands that that want to go that way and start producing locally. So we have a lot of interest, and we still have to hold back quite a few of them right now because we can't expand that quickly.
Yeah, you're pulling an Elon with superchargers and stuff then.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, at least. Like it's but then in the wing and in the kite and in the surf business, which is which is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Stepping into manufacturing and kind of I guess if you look at that metaphor as like your Appletree brand, and you got some deep roots, and you don't know where those roots are going to go, and it's kind of exciting to see you stepping off into that, because not only you getting a good board, but brand recognition and then expansion is something that everybody wants to see. Congratulations on that. That's exciting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's cool that people see it and want to be a part of it, and when you buy one of our boards, like we try to keep the price relatively low, especially compared to what other brands are doing. But you support local Portuguese people instead of like really far away where most of the money ends up in the pockets of executives and whatnot. But we're trying to sort of build a community, and right now we have 30 something people working there. So it's turning into a nice family, and it's really a family business with me and my brother, and then we have a third partner, and then everyone there. And for me, Portugal is like 2,000 kilometers away, so I have to go there every once in a while. And right now, I still know everyone in the factory by name, but it's getting to a point where I can't do that anymore. But I hope that we still, transfer that family value and everything into everything that we do. So
yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. It's a unique story, especially coming from every product, or not every product, but a lot of products that we don't know where they're being built, how they're being built, and that transparency helps build some brand loyalty and trust. So that's pretty cool. Yeah,
that's what we've been noticing, and we're working on expanding that quite a bit. So we're for next year, for instance, what we're going to do is you're going to find a near field chip in your board, which you can scan with your phone, and then you get the serial number, and everything is stored on that. And you can go into this sort of virtual Appletree world that we're building, where you can see who built your board. You get maintenance tips. You can, have a direct line with us for if you have any issue. And, we offer advice on how to repair, how to maintain your board, how to take care of the board. And then eventually we even want to go as far as like how to recycle your board, end of life, what can you do when it's done, and how can you dispose of it in such a way that it can be recycled. So we have a long way to go still. It's a really fun process to work on, which is one of the things that I'm really passionate about. And I'm also, like, now that I've got more staff doing the sort of normal day-to-day stuff, I can think about these kind of things more, which is a really, really cool thing, I think. And it's something that I really love doing as well.
Oh yeah, the innovation, innovations in your hands, which is pretty cool. To walk people on shapes, sizes, can we maybe go into a little bit about that? Is there anything you can share about? Because a lot of people come to me and they're like, what shape should the bottom of my board be if I want to get out of the water quickly? And my foil track placement. So foil tracks go too forward, too far backwards. One guy just reached out from Ottawa, and he was asking about, I want to make sure my board is lively. I got a bit of a bigger foil, so my track placement, I want to make sure that my foil can go far enough forward. Could we go into some of those details, into thought processes behind them?
Yeah. So it can be a bit confusing because we now have in our, like, just focusing on the wing range, we have 3 models, which I know is quite a lot. But at the same time, we're a board brand, so I think we're allowed to make specialty boards. At the same time, we make everything to order, or we have very limited stock, and also shops usually have limited stock, so we make a lot of boards to order. This allows us to be more flexible in sizing and everything, because we don't have to calculate, like, again, going back to another brand that has to order from Asia, they have to decide a year in advance, like, this is what we want. We need to fill a container. There's 300 boards in a container. We have to decide on sizes. But that winging and foiling is such a new sport. It's developing quicker than this normal 1 to 2 year cycle that most brands are on. So they might order with a factory, order 300-400 boards, and wait a year for these boards to finish and ship to your local shop. And then they have to sell them for another season, which is like another year. So, but within the year of them waiting for their delivery, the whole trend might have shifted, or the whole, foils might have changed. So, for instance, like you say, foil placement is highly dependent on the way the foil is designed and what brand of foil you use. And some brands are really pushing their foils forward because they're designing them in such a way that they work better, more forward in the box, which then means that some older boards with the foil box very far back can't accommodate these foils anymore, which is annoying. For me, not very sustainable, but I understand that it's a new sport and it's pushing forwards, and foils are, I'm still amazed when I get new foils, how much better they still are. Like,
it's incredible, eh?
It's incredible. It's not done. Like in innovation and development is definitely not done. So we're still in this super exciting phase that kiting was in maybe 15 years ago, where every new model was exciting and new, and now everything is good. There's no bad kites anymore. With wings and with foils, like, it's the new. You still want the new stuff. Now, well, we only make boards, so we have to try to accommodate most, if not all, of the foils. So what we've done last year is that we made new tracks that are our own tracks. So a lot of, you can buy standard tracks, but we made our own tracks that work better with our construction. They're also much stronger, and they're quite a lot. They're like 2 inches or 5-6 centimeters longer than the standard boxes, which means when we place them correctly, you should be able to fit any foil to our boards. We also make them neutral as possible, which means the angle of attack, so between the mast of the foil and your standing position with our boards is 90 degrees, so it's like the most neutral position. With some foil brands, you might want a base plate shim to compensate for a design choice that they made. So, for instance, F1 makes their boards with a bit of tail rocker. So that means that the angle between the standing area and the foil ends up at like 91 degrees. So their foils are compensating for that. So a lot of people like to shim their F1 foil with 1 degree negative to make it neutral again. So these are things that we can't help, that we have to sort of rely on foil brands. For instance, Armstrong is a foil brand that really pushed that forward position. So those foils naturally want to sit more forward in the box. But newer foils might want to go back. And we also are slowly moving our foil boxes in all our models further forward. So I'm currently riding my Axis Spitfire foil on a normal fuselage almost all the way to the back again. But then Axis has launched this advanced fuselage where the mast connection to the fuselage is 4 centimeters more forward, which means I have to compensate with my mast placement and put it 5 centimeters forward. But because of our longer boxes, I still have enough room to play. So we try to we experiment a lot. We test a lot of different foil brands constantly to check if they still work. But it's also a personal preference thing. Get some of those wing nut things that you can adjust your foil in the water, for instance. They're like not very expensive, but it gives you the opportunity. You don't have to go out of the water. You get these big wing nuts on your foil, and you can move it. So just until you have it in a position that you feel comfortable with. There's no good and bad. There's just what you like and what you're looking for.
That's a good tip. And heard about
the advice on the foil placement.
Fair enough. Yeah. What about
shape?
Shapes now?
Yeah. So it's another one where a lot of development, and it's very sort of trend sensitive as well. So a couple of years ago, all the boards had these massive cutouts behind the foil. Some brands still have, because somehow everyone believed that really helps release or push the board up. So our first boards also had that, and now it works. It's fine. The boards work, but we slowly realized that it's not perfect for all conditions, and it doesn't always work. So most brands are now onto this more flatter surface of the board, or bottom of the board, which makes sense because it's a more stable area. And if you, for instance, look at kiteboards or windsurf boards, they're all flat with a hard edge on the back. And this design works really well for planing speed. So it's stable at slow speeds, and it's fast at high speeds because you get this planing surface. The hard edge on the back of the board makes the water release. So a rounder edge will pull the water up and sort of slow you down slightly. And at planing speed, that is, not at slow speed. This hard edge surface, like a windsurf board, glides really well at speed. So a lot of brands started, including us, started making boards with these hard edges, flat bottom, and that works really well. Right now, though, we're moving ahead with shapes, and we're moving away from this flat planing surface. But it doesn't mean that there's no market for a flat surface. So we are, as a brand, as I said before, focusing heavily on the advanced rider, and the semi-pro riding guys know what they're doing, can properly wing in almost all conditions, and everyone's getting better all the time. Like people, even in the higher pro ranks and freestyle, people are doing stuff that was unimaginable 2 years ago. So we constantly have to evolve with that as well.
Yeah, I guess you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and we can, because again, we produce ourselves, so we can basically move much quicker than other brands as well. So we can move and work with our team much more intensively and come out with new products quicker, even though we don't want to come out with new products too often, because you also don't want to render their old stuff obsolete. But what we found is that the planing story is true, but by the time you have enough ground speed or water surface speed to really get the benefit of this planing surface, your foil takes over. So you lift, and it's the foil. It's not the board anymore. So this whole theory of a planing hull being easier to ride or easier to release is actually not true. It is more stable because it's a flatter, wider surface, and it's much more easier at slow speeds to, get up on your feet, gain speed. But as soon as you have a little bit of speed, you pump it up and you're away. And this flat area, actually, what it's designed to do when you plane, so when you're on plane on the board, it actually sucks to the water surface. It actually doesn't want to release because it wants to stay on the water surface. So what happens on these bigger, wider boards is that if you're on foil and you touch down, you really feel it hit the brakes. And then if you're lucky, it skips back up. But it does slow you down. And with more radical wave riding, for instance, you do hit the wave quite often. And same for freestyle. If you jump, like ideally you land on foil and stay on foil. But what happens in practice a lot is that you sort of hit the water surface and that slows you down. And sometimes it slows you down so bad that you get stuck in your tracks and you have to pump your wing again to get back up the foil. So we started experimenting with a completely different hull shape, which is way rounder. And we noticed that if you touch down on this round shape, it actually sort of bounces back up. And it's not just a round shape. It's also like we made these boards into a very sort of a teardrop shape with actually a little point on the end. And that's where we are now with the latest range of boards. And what you feel with these boards is at slow speed, they have less drag than this wide flat board because it's like a teardrop shape. So it's a very hydrodynamic shape where the water can flow around. So they are actually easier to get to speed And then once you hit foil liftoff speed or stall speed, you will go up, and this round bottom with the tip on the end sort of releases the water, and it doesn't stick to the water. It really flows up naturally in your way. And then the same when you touch down or when you land, you hit the water surface and it just bounces back up. And we've literally been testing this, and I actually was testing it yesterday again, just on purpose, constantly hit the water surface and feel what the board's doing. And sometimes you hit it in such a way that you feel it break, but most of the time it sort of skips back up. So it's the reason why our newest boards are called the skipper, because that's what they do. They skip up.
All right, fair enough. So, because the board I'm currently riding, I'm riding a KT Drifter, and they have a triple or quad concave on the bottom. Any thoughts on that bottom shaping aspect of things? Because I find the one concern and complaint that I've had from blow-ups is that they're flat, so they stick. But I found this concave, the shape of the bottom of this one, because I think there's 2 or 3 ripples or 3 ripples. It definitely helps with not sticking.
It does. Yeah, it does. So concaves stick. Like concaves are there for stability at high speed, so they do stick because they are stable because they stick. So when you're on plane, they are actually stable because it holds the board onto the water surface and make it stay. But these like concaves with sort of the tips of between the concaves that creates release points. That does help. So we are experimenting more with like a boat hull kind of shape, like what you call a displacement hull, which really sort of moves the water in 2 ways, but also creates a release point when you go up, the water releases down. So with the skipper, there's actually a sort of a bulge on the front of the board that sits lower than the foil tracks. So it hits the water first before the flatter part in the back hits the water, and it already starts to bounce back up before the rest of the board hits. And then the tail, you have to, it's maybe hard to see on the video, but if you look on the website, you'll see the whole shape of the tail is completely designed for that release. So it's a different way of looking at there's different ways to solve this problem. And like I said, like we're still making flat boards. So we're making 3 models. We have one, the Jazz, which is our sort of freestyle board in the smaller sizes, and it's quite wide and short and fat. And in the smaller sizes, works really well because if you land your trick and you land on the water surface, the board sort of stops. It does break, but at least you land the trick and you can pump it up and ride away. In the bigger sizes, like 95 liter, 80 liter, these boards are extremely stable because they're short and wide, and they're like super good for intermediate riders who come off their like 130, 140, maybe inflatable board. They go down to like a 90 liter board, just saying like your average maybe 80 kilogram weight. So you're riding a 90 board, which floats your weight, but it's getting tippy because it's close to your weight. These boards are really stable, super easy to ride, and it will last you a really, really long time. But you will notice that when you get better and you get more into wave riding, that this stubby, shorter, wider shape does get in the way, and the edges start to hit the water in the wave when you're riding waves and stuff. So I mean, it works. It works for a lot of people. I still ride a Jazz quite often on flat water because it's a really nice free ride board and it's really super easy, even in a sinker. So I'm 95 kilos. I ride like a 62 liter sinker in a Jazz. I can almost ride that all of the time because it's so nice and wide. I sink it. I'm on my knees. I grab my wing. I get a bit of pressure in the wing, and because it's so wide, it pushes you up to the surface. And then it flows on the surface quite easy because it's so wide. You don't need a lot of speed for the thing to sit on the water surface. I get up and I just pump it. I crank the wing and I pump it up into foil. So that board works well for a lot of people, and definitely going to continue making that board for that reason. And then the next board up is the Slice, which is our sort of free ride all round kind of board, which is compared to the Jazz is longer and narrower. And it's got more of this displacement hull in the front, but it's still a flat bottom with a straight edge on the back. So it's more of a flat planing surface style board. These boards work well as both a sinker and as a floater style board. They're more traditional. It's still our most popular model that we're selling now. And it's a board that from intermediate to really advanced people really like, and they keep riding. And it's also a board that you sort of don't outgrow. But then finally, the skippers are, we believe, the next best thing, but only for advanced riders. And actually, the biggest skipper wing size that we make is 75 liters. And the reason for this is that it's designed as a sinker. It's designed as a sinker style board, because if you are going to ride this board as a floater, you can, but you need to go way bigger. And then it works really well as a low wind board. But that's what we sort of done in our downwind subfoil boards. So the downwind subfoil boards in the smaller sizes, like 80, 90, 100 liters, are also the low wind skipper wing boards. But the skipper wing range, as is designed as a sinker. So you should ride it as a sinker. And I personally, again, I ride a 60 liter. You do need some wind. It's not a light wind option. It's a high performance shape, but from like 16 knots, 17 knots onwards, for me, it's easy to ride. And as soon as you have a little gust and you get it to the water surface, it's so fast and it bumps up so easy that people actually appreciate that low end side of the board more than a sticky flat bottom. And they really are like, wow, I'm amazed that I can ride this small of a board. And if you want to go sinker, which I know that a lot of people eventually want to go sinker, because the advantages of a sinker wingboard are insane. Like, it's so much nicer to ride when you're up on foil, because there's a lot less board. This is actually really easy for a sinker. So, but advanced, like, it's not for your average.
Well, and you're riding minus 30 to your kgs, is what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's good to know.
And that's another really, really common question that I think we have quite a good answer now, and that is, avoid anything that's like your weight and then minus 15 or 20. Go lower. If you want to sink. Like, a lot of people will go, like, say you're 90 kilos, people will go learn on 140, improve on a 110, maybe get a 90, and then I might try a 75. But it's terrible, because if you get a board that only just sinks, it's super quirky. It just wants to throw you off left, right, and center. Like, it's actually not easy to ride, because right where you want to grab your wing, the board throws you off, or a little wave hits the foil, or a little current pushes, or it goes, or you fall forward and the board slides under you on the back. If you get a proper sinker, like minus 20 or even more, you can just grab the board, push it under your knees and hold it under. And then you're actually quite nice and stable, and you can grab your wing or do like the sink bug style, where you make yourself really small and crouch to get a bit of wind under the wing and pull up. And I literally had this with a friend yesterday when I was riding. He was riding a 70. The guy was 85 kilo. He was riding a Slice 70 that I gave him because he thought he wanted to buy that. Then I gave him my Skipper 60, and he was like completely confused. He said, this 60 is easier to ride than the Slice 70. And it's crazy, because there was a lot of wind. It was a good day, but like, that's how that works in our mind, and then what we advise. So yeah, if you want to go sinker, wait for a proper day, because wind helps, makes it way easier. Wait for a day that's at least 18 to 20 knots, and go proper sinker straight away. No matter the brand, just go all in sinker. And I know you're going to have more fun.
So you're recommending like minus 30?
Yeah, 20, 25, 30, depending on your skill. But I personally like 60 better than 70. Like all right. 60, I can sink, be on my knees on the board. I'm like waist deep, like little under chest deep, and I'm stable. Like, I can control this thing that wants to go to the surface underwater with just my knees, and I have two hands to grab my wing and get power. It's not sinking too far, it's not floating too much. For me, it's the right balance. And
all right, you're
of course, yeah,
using straps or no straps?
Both. Doesn't matter for me. I like using straps as well. I sometimes use the straps underwater to hold the board, sort of control the board. So I grab the back strap with both my feet and I sort of hold it between my feet. It does help, but I can do with or without. It doesn't. I just like riding straps because I like doing some jumps as well. But we have our own straps, which are really soft EVA straps, so you can actually stand on the strap as well. So I wave ride out of straps. I just stand on the straps, and then I slip my feet in if I want to do a jump. And then I personally constantly switch, but for me, it works either way.
Oh, that's cool.
You?
I'm still riding strapless, but this year I was. There's just it's. I think it's in all of us. There's that little piece in there. It's like it would be cool to ride a small board with some straps and do something, right? So it's in there. It hasn't materialized yet, but I'm definitely, because I'm 70 kilos and I'm riding a 72. It floats me. Water's colder. So for me, I can get going with that thing. And I switched down. I've been riding primarily a 3-meter wing this year. And my foil's a bit bigger. It's like a V1 Armstrong 1550. So it's a bigger foil, but I can get that thing going pretty quickly with the new 3s from KT. And it's this year finally that I realized that with skill and with that development of the wing, I don't need much bigger for like 17, 18 knots or whatever. I can get going because I'm a smaller guy on a tiny wing. And then the fun of being on such a small wing is pretty cool, but that's not boards, but
no,
so
but
for that,
it will be the same with boards. It will be the same with boards because smaller gear equals more freedom, looser, quicker control over your foil, less drag. Same with the wing. I mean, a big wing is just flapping and
it just sits in the
flip
way
around. It's just, and a 3 meter is easy, same with, and it will be the same with board if you start going smaller. But if like at 70 kilos, you need to go 50, you need to go all in. Don't go 60. You have to go 50 and it will be a struggle, but I mean, there's no fun if you can do it in an hour. Like what's the fun in that? It's like e-foiling. It's too easy.
You want something that brings you back and you're almost ready to throw it away. And I think that's what kind of brings us coming back. So now length of board, obviously, have you had a lot of questions of people asking how long is too long? How short is too short? Cause we kind of talked about the bottom, we talked about foil track, but what about width and length now?
It all ties together, obviously. Okay. The trend is going longer and narrower, which the KT's boards are, people like them because I hear that a lot because they're a bit longer. And it does just work. I mean, a longer, narrower board equals less drag, better low end. People say like, swing weight, this and that. But if you move the foil a bit forward, you're more balanced. So that swing weight's not much of an issue. So it's slowly getting a little bit longer, and then you can go narrower. So that's a nice plus. But when you go narrower and longer, it does get more unstable, especially when you're on your knees. So it's harder for people to learn. So I would say
definitely
short and wide and a bit chunky is very good for beginner to intermediate. And then once you know how to ride back and forth, do your decks and all that stuff, and you're going to ride whenever, you can go longer and narrower. But then the really long ones, you get more into sort of the downwind territory of boards, which this year is of course really blown up. And it's insane how low of a wind speed you can go on a downwind board with a wing. It's crazy because these things are just like, they're like super thin, like a needle. They have very limited drag. The bottom is super rounded, so it doesn't have any planing surface. It's just like a canoe. It just keeps going and it maintains speed. So with a little bit of wind and a little gust and a little bit extra help of pumping, you can get it up to speed and up to foil speed and cruise onto foil. But then you're riding this really long board, and you got to ask yourself if you even want to ride in 8 knots or 10 knots. If you're a super committed winger and you want to wing all the time, and there's a lot of people riding in lakes where it's super gusty and they want to always make sure they can get back to shore, this kind of board can really work, but you don't want to wave ride with it, for instance.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that trend
Is
definitely blow up, especially at a hood and stuff.
yeah,
Because obviously that is ideal conditions where you can kind of, but I guess any downwind situation would be pretty ideal. Now, my buddy from Vancouver Island last year mentioned that that was the future, and they are definitely coming down. So what you're saying is the bottom is shaped a lot more like a canoe in that sense. So it would be a lot tippier to get on, more for
yeah,
intermediate to advanced
super
riders,
narrow.
definitely. Okay,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
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 are you
yeah,
carrying a
and
line of those as well?
yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
it's also called the skipper because it's the same range. So the skipper range actually goes from a tiny pocket board that you would use for kiting and behind the boat, a surfoil board, like a prone foil board, which is the same characteristics, narrower, longer, and with this bulge in the displacement hole, and then the wing range, and then the downwind range, and it sort of flows together. So it goes all the way from like 11 liters to 120 liters. 120 liters in the biggest downwind board, and everything in between. And then we just chop it up into bits like these are perfect for winging, these are perfect for prone. And then we also tune the construction for each one. So the prone boards are a little lighter. They don't have inserts. The wingboard boards have inserts. They come with deck pads as standard. They are the wing construction. And then when you go bigger, they are lighter construction again. So you don't have inserts on the downwind boards because you're not going to jump them. They're a bit more fragile, but they're ultra light and ultra high performance. And you can, like I said, you can definitely wing on these. They are really, really nice for winging, but it's not for like hardcore jumping or anything. But
I'll
you're
have to
also,
check.
yeah,
I'll have to check to see if the store in Vic has some of those, if she brought any in, because it'd be pretty fun to try. She's a couple hours away. It'd be pretty fun to give it a whirl on some different ranges.
At the moment, they're really hard to get because we are extremely full in the factory, and we just shipped out a few to the US. There's a few here and there, but I know that most of them are already pre-sold, and our factory is running full stop, but our lead time at the moment is about 10 weeks because we're so full. So we're trying to keep up, but we also want to, training new people and expanding is just not easy. So it takes time. So we're doing our best. But
it does
we
take
try
time
to get boards out as quick as we can, but yeah, there's a limit to what we can do with our crew.
No, definitely. Well, hey, thanks for sharing a little bit of that history and then walking through all that different board technology with us. Now, for those who are meeting you for the first time, could we talk maybe a little bit about you? Look into how did you find wind sports for the first time?
So me personally, I come from a surfing background. I'm 40 years old now. I used to windsurf in the 90s because who didn't? My father used to windsurf, but I never really liked wind sports. I never really liked the windsurfing. It never really got me. So I didn't do any water sports for a long time. I started surfing, normal prone surfing, when I was 15, 16. But back then in the Netherlands, there was no scene. So it was really, really small. I had to learn myself. Like, if you look in the map in the Netherlands where it is, we're kind of blocked by the UK. So we don't have open ocean. We only have the North Sea. It's really shallow. So the waves get big, but we never get like proper swell. Like, it's always short period, short lived. When there's wind, there's waves. When there's no wind, there's usually no waves. So
yeah, same as the Great Lakes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Great Lakes, actually. Sometimes, actually, the Great Lakes have better swell than us because it's deeper. But we do get some north swell because if you look on the map north, there's like a gap toward Iceland and Norway, and that's the only direction that we get proper swell in. So especially in summer, you get some days where it's like waist high, hip to waist high, cleanish, maybe 9-10 seconds, something like that. But that's it. Never much bigger than that. Sometimes if a storm passes and it's really nice weather straight after, or the wind turns offshore, you get this magic few hours where it can even barrel and be super clean. But this is nothing compared to France or Portugal or Hawaii or whatever. But like I said, so I got into kite surfing through my brother, who started working at Mystics. So I started to give that a go as well, and found that I never really twin tipped. I went straight to surfboards because in the Netherlands, we get a lot of really strong sideshore wind. And then the waves do get big, like 4, 5, 6 meter waves. It's not uncommon. But chunky and like full on 30 knots sideshore. But riding a surfboard with a kite is amazing there because it's just like there's waves everywhere. And you can just smash the lip and then ride to the next wave and just do one big turn. And then, that was really nice. So that's why kiting was the first thing for me as a new wind sport. And all of these are kiteboards, by the way. Okay. So we still do a lot of those. And then foiling sort of started with kite foiling slowly. Actually, at the same time that we were experimenting making carbon fiber surfboards and kite surfboards. We were experimenting with carbon fiber because it works really well with our construction method. But for kite surfing, the carbon boards were nice, but so stiff that they get really chattery when it's choppy. So it's amazing when the waves are clean, but then they're hardly ever clean when you're kiting because it's windy. So it works, but it's not ideal. It works really nice for like freestyle and strapless freestyle, and the boards are super light, so people, and they look cool, so people still want them. But like for comfort, I always advise just to go for the fiberglass because it's nicer.
Yeah, good to know as well.
And then foiling came about, so we started experimenting, making a few like early foil boards. They were pretty shit, and we were struggling with the connection. And it was also when foiling still brands had different widths and sizes of the connection, and it was still Tuttle boxes, which are completely dead apart from racing. It was tricky, we were just experimenting with some stuff. We tried all kinds of ways to connect the foil, bolting it through the board, whatever. But the carbon fiber really worked well. So carbon fiber is naturally extremely stiff. And with foiling, you have this massive leverage thing with the mast and the wings. The thing that you steer is quite far away from you. So the stiffer you make that whole connection, stiffer you make the connection, the board to the mast, stiffer you make the mast, stiffer you make the fuselage, the nicer it rides, the better control that you have. And it turned out our boards, we were already using the waterproof foam. We started to use the carbon fiber. And it's just like super nice. And it's just a natural thing to start making these boards. And then it grew from there into surfoiling slowly came up. So we were the first people surfoiling in the Netherlands, my brother and me and one friend, just trying to surfoil on kite foils, like a 1200 centimeter kite foil and a 60 centimeter mast trying to surfoil, and we got little glides in. It was really fun. We got shouted out of the water by every longboarder that was afraid of the sword that we had on the board, but it was fun.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, made a few boards. Like that's a nice thing about having a board brand. You can just dream it up, cook it up, and make it. It's really nice. We made all kinds of weird prototypes, just having a laugh, just experimenting with new stuff. And then winging came, and it was actually quite funny because it was just after we moved to Portugal. So my brother was in Portugal and I was here. I'm in the Netherlands, by the way. So Portugal, it's not far, but it's also not that you drive there. And we got disconnected a little bit because he was full on production and I was full on sales, marketing, and everything. So we got split up, and we had a few meetings where we were discussing what we're going to do in what the new projects are. And I kept saying like, this winging will be a thing, this winging. And he was like, no way, it's never going to be a thing. It's the lady pass. I was like, no, it's going to be the new thing. It's going to be the new thing. And I put it on the agenda for months, like, I don't know, 6 months. Every time we had this section in the monthly meeting, like chances. And I would just put winging in chances. It's like, screw you with your winging. I eventually got it to make a prototype, and it was absolutely horrible. I remember it was like, I think Kalama back in the day was making these subs. They were really thin, ultra wide, like flat as a door, and super sticky, super weird. It was like 108 liters. We did make it out of carbon fiber, but it was massive, so it took a huge amount of carbon fiber. Actually, quite a costly thing. But we managed to get it on. We managed to learn how to wing on this. It's actually not long ago, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
First series of, well, it was the first series of wings. Ozone Wasp is what we had. We worked together with Ozone quite a bit, so we got a Wasp from them. This board didn't work, so we started working on some scaling up a few of our surfoil board, and then I remember I had it like a 70 liter, and I was like, this is going to be easy on it, because I was surfoiling on like a 35 liter or something. So I was like, 70 liter, huge. You have it in your hands, and we're used to all these like 21, 20 liter, but like 70 liters, huge. Like, remember, I'm 90 kilos. So I tried winging on this 7, and it just like, yeah, you can imagine what happened. It was impossible. I was just shouting and screaming. I remember my wife was in a boat next to me. It's like, shall we go home? No, I need to get this. It was terrible. There was no school. There was no nothing. There was no inflatables. It was just trying to, I eventually got it, but it was such a hassle. But the rest is history. I guess the winging took off so quickly. Of course, together with COVID and stuff, it was a bit of a coincidence, crazy situation where everyone was jumping on this new sport. No brand could deliver because China was closed, locked down, their ships were not going. So our demand just went through the roof. So we were just producing wingboards, and it took over like so much of our production, because we were doing mostly kiteboards and some kite foil. And now we are doing, like, I'd say like 2/3 of what we do has a foil box, maybe even more. So it's combined wingboards and kiteboard. And we're making a lot of boards now. So yeah, it's good that we put it on the agenda and then I pushed it through, because otherwise we wouldn't be where we are now. And like I said, it works so well with our construction. It's the way that we produce boards, the carbon fiber, the foam, the stiffness, the connection. It's actually ideally tuned for foiling, but it wasn't developed for foiling. It just naturally works, and it works so much better than any other construction. So yeah, it's just a lucky thing, I guess. It's just
I guess that was meant to be. What was when you did get flying for the first time? Do you remember what that feeling felt like? I ask everybody this just because I'm fascinated by everybody's experience.
Relief mainly that I finally got it to work. I can't remember if I was already kite foiling, so I knew the feeling.
Okay.
So with the wing, it was more like, finally. That now don't fall. Like, I'm going one way. At some point, I need to go the other way. I need to do this jibe thing, which I'm not going to make, of course. So I fell and I had to swim back. But yeah. No, I was kite foiling already, so I knew the feeling, but it's still a magical thing. Like, foiling is still such, and everyone always asks on the beach because it's still quite new. So a lot of people who are not into it are maybe seeing it for the first time, and everyone always asks. And I think it's the closest thing you can get to flying. Like, it's flying by yourself, at least. So
that's a good analogy. Same with powder. It's close to powder snowboarding, powder skiing, that kind of thing too. Yeah. But for me, it was just I was blown away. So. Fair enough. Well, flying it is. I'm okay with flying. Yeah.
I always like when you're in Central America and stuff, you always have these pelicans that just glide on the wave, these lines of pelicans. I always compare it to that. It's like that. They're doing the same thing, just slightly above the water, using the air, and we use the water, but it's a similar kind of glide and feeling. And it's just like no more noise. No, it's just smooth, no more chop, no more bouncing around, just a glide, just still magical. And still, it's what keeps people coming back.
Oh yeah, especially. I think everybody it's getting introduced now. It takes a little while to learn it, obviously, but they're blown away at that. For me, it was the sightseeing as well, because you can climb upwind in 15 minutes and then do this massive downwinder, which was never possible. You would have to work so hard windsurfing and kiting to get that far upwind, but foiling, it's 2 tacks and you're there. So all that aspect of things has has been just so fun.
No, just I want to go there, and then you just go there.
You
and
just
then
go.
You go there, and you can just go all the way downwind because the wind's better there because you know you're going to get back up when you start. And then another thing here is kiting is so Holland is full of lakes. There's water everywhere, but kiting is only allowed on a few flatwater, freshwater spots and on the sea. But there's
That's recent,
hundreds
right?
of lakes. No. It's been like that forever.
Okay.
The lakes are so small, and there's trees everywhere, and there's like Holland. There's too many people here. Basically, there's cars, trees, cows, sheep, whatever. Everything is in your way. So there's only a few spots that are big enough to launch a kite, and then there's like they have a bunch of buoys in the water. You have to stay within this but back in the days in the 80s and 90s when windsurfing was big boom and everybody was windsurfing, there's windsurf clubs and little windsurf beaches got put in back then, and they're still there. So you're allowed to wing everywhere, literally everywhere. So it opens up a completely new market of people who don't live close to the sea, and live close to a lake, and people are winging everywhere, and it all comes together. It's allowed, it's legal, it's less dangerous than kiting. It's way easier in gusty conditions than kiting because the lakes are all gusty. And with kiting, it's too dangerous because your kite drops in the middle of the lake and you're screwed. And with the wing, it doesn't matter. You just sit and wait for the next gust and you go again. So that makes it safe and fun for everyone to do on all of these lakes. And I think everyone in the Netherlands lives within 30 minutes of a lake where you can wing, like almost everywhere. So this opens up this whole new, and the same is in Germany and in Denmark and in large parts of France. There's so many new spots open up. I hear the same from my guys in the UK as well. All these old windsurf clubs now start winging. A lot of them stopped operating, but some are reopening with winging. So it's a completely. And I see a lot of inflow from old windsurfers who haven't done water sports for years, and then get back into. They see this winging. It's like, oh, that's fun. And they're old now, so they have a proper job. They have some disposable income, so they'll just buy the whole set and just go, which is amazing. It's cool.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, and it gives them a new opportunity. I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, "This is something brand new. It's awesome that I can watch the creation and the building of a brand new sport as well." Because, like, I didn't see windsurfing, but this has just been such a blessing, I guess, just to be able to watch something because it's expanding so quickly. The kids now are throwing backflips, front flips, 720s, like all of that stuff is just insane. So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think it has exactly the right balance between it's not too easy that you get bored, and it's not so hard that it takes years to master. It's the perfect balance. Like you can have success in just a few hours, but there is a learning curve that is really long. So you keep getting better slowly, but quick enough to keep it exciting, which in a lot of other sports is not the case. Like it's either super dangerous or it gets dangerous really quickly, or it's so hard. Like normal surfing, if you don't start normal surfing before you're like 15 or 16, you're never going to get really good. And people that go surfing in their 30s, they can ride a wave, but they'll never get proper good. With winging, you can start at 40 and still get good, within a few years, which I think really helps the popularity.
I started surfing 4 days ago, and
oh, sorry, I crushed your dreams now. Oh shit,
that's all right. I just turned 40 this year, and I'm in Tofino, BC right now, and I was like, or down in Yuki, actually, Ucluelet, and obviously everybody talks about Tofino. It's 20 minutes away, so I was like, whatever. So I have this obviously windsurf, kite, and then wing. And I was like, I'm going to give this thing a go. I've sup surfed, but I've never traditional surfed. Right.
Yeah.
So I have this big long board right now, and I caught my first few waves, and it was pretty cool. But yeah, definitely there's so much learning. So I was just going every day. This is just my personality. So every day for 2-3 hours, and then just try to paddle in. I got to figure out everything that I didn't have to figure out winging. I've winged at this spot once, and I would just catch like at Long Beach, you catch it, you kick out, and all the surfers were waving, and they were like, "What are you doing on that wing?" And so I was doing that, catching 10 times more waves, but this has been a pretty fun experience so far, and yeah, I don't know where it's going to end, but we'll have to see.
Like it doesn't. Like, I'm not saying like you
I'm
can
not
never
going to go
surf,
to pipe,
but you're not going to ride barrels or do like crazy
No.
turns.
Yeah.
And with winging, if you start at 40 in a couple of years, you can do taxi, you can ride waves, and you can
Everything.
race your friends and do all that stuff and have like a bit of a quicker fix than with surfing. You really have to commit, and you have to be that guy that is on the water for 3 hours every day. You get completely wasted. And
you drained.
It's still fun.
Oh, it's a blast. Yeah. I had a complete blast surfing. There was like probably 20 of us there, most beginners. And what it did do actually is it helped me reconnect with that. Because as you get better winging and windsurfing and stuff, you get a little bit pickier and you're like, I want 3-4 foot swell. Like with us, it's like, if I can get 4 foot swell on a windsurfer in 20-25 knots on a smaller sail, it's beautiful. Same thing with winging. You want some bigger stuff so you can go small. But this, I looked at people and how excited they were to ride this 2 foot, 2 foot wave. I was like, okay, fine. Like I'm going to have fun with this and then see where I can take it. And it'll only help my other sports.
Yeah.
But,
definitely. But surfers are the pickiest people I know. Maybe in the Netherlands where the waves are always shit, and Dutch people are quite like we have this saying "gaan als ze er staan," which basically translates to "if they're there, you go," because that's what you do here. But if you're in France, like the locals will be on the beach like, "Nah, it's too not so onshore. We're not going to go." So yeah, they do get ultra picky after a while, and it's. I don't know. Maybe with winging in a few years' time, we say the same. It's like, I remember that winging. Yeah, that was boring.
I'm curious to see.
I don't know what. We'll see.
Curious to see what's going to come next.
Quickly. I don't think it will happen that quickly. But it did sort of happen with kite foiling. Like most of the guys that I know who were kite foiling are all winging now, and they don't really kite foil anymore. So I don't know. Might happen. We do still sell quite a few kiteboards, so there's new kiters going into foiling for as a light wind option. So for me, and it's still there. Everything has its place, like you have with windsurfing. I go kiting when it's really strong and the waves are perfect. I still go kiting. I'm not going to go winging in 30 knots and 4-meter waves. Like I have friends who do, but I can't be bothered. And I also don't wing when it's less than 15 knots because it's just boring to me. And I'll go kite foiling because it's so much better in those lightweight conditions. And then when there's no wind, I go surf foiling or normal surfing. And in between, I go winging. So it's perfect. I wish I had more time. It has its place. For me, it has a perfect place in that bracket of like 13, 14 to 20, 23 knots. It's my wing range, what I like to go winging in.
No, it's beautiful. At least then you have the tool set to pick from different. And I think that's what a lot of us who have been in this forever is we're now opening up this toolbox. Yeah. And I think more people are realizing it's like, it's good surfing weather now, or it's good this weather now, it's good that weather now. And at least with all these new companies and coming out with awesome new toys, you can expand your fun zone, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, is there anything else that you'd like to cover?
No, I don't think so. I'm keen to see how the Canadian market is sort of opening up. We're doing a little bit in Canada, but it's always tricky for us to know from here, and it's long and expensive to travel there. So I try to go at least to Hood River once a year because it's a nice location where I can meet everyone. Really hope to be able to visit Canada at some point. See if I can sort of slip that in. But
Well, heck, let me know if you come out. We got some good connections on the coast here on the island, just north of Hood. And I might actually drive down to AWSI because that's in September, and it's a 6 to 7 hour drive for me. It's not far at all.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
That'd be super fun.
It's really fun. Like it's a really fun event. They have been talking about opening it up to the public for a number of years, but the location just doesn't allow because it's way too small. And now with winging and all these new brands coming in, I think they're also limiting the amount of brands that are allowed to exhibit there, because it's just this tiny stretch of grass where they have the event, and it's just getting too small. But it's a really, really nice event, and everyone's there, and it's a really good opportunity to test new gear and possibly meet new people for your podcast as well, which is cool. So yeah, it's probably completely worth it to go, and you get to meet us and ride our boards as well, which is
oh yeah, that'd be fun.
Quite a
so
fun.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time out of your day today and enjoying I think you had half your beer. So that's pretty.
My beer is done.
Oh, it's done.
It's 7 here. My wife is WhatsApping me when I'm going to come home. And,
okay.
It's all good.
Perfect.
It's still raining.
It'd be a nice family night. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight.